From guitars to championship rings, the game of high-stakes pawning is brutal, and not everyone walks out a winner. Tune in, because when Dana White sets his sights on Rick's treasured samurai sword, things take a shocking turn. Hollywood meets. Pawn a man named Robert walks into the shop carrying a poster of Dennis Quaid playing Ronald Reagan. He's beaming, certain that this poster, signed by Quaid himself, is worth at least $350. Rick, of course, isn't about to just take his word for it. He's been in the game too long for that. But as he takes a closer look, his expression shifts, not with skepticism, but with something else entirely. Something that makes even Chum pause. Rick asks the golden question. Is this signature real? Robert, without missing a beat, swears up and down that it is. But anyone selling something at a pawn shop will say their item is the real deal. Rick calls in an expert, except this time, the expert isn't just some random man with a magnifying glass. It's Dennis Quaid himself. The moment Quaid walks in, Robert looks like he's about to faint. It's all fun and jokes until Rick hands over the poster and asks, "Did you sign this?" Quaid squints at it, tilts his head, and then nods. He was my favorite president, and I voted for him twice. First time I voted for him in 1980, I was an actor out in Hollywood already. I came home, and my roommate, said, "Who'd you vote?" "For?" I said, "Reagan." He said, "You are kicked out of the hippies." It's real. Robert is probably thinking cha-ching time, but Rick, always ready to negotiate, only offers $100. Robert's confidence wavers, but he plays it cool. They go back and forth before finally settling on $200. Not quite what Robert wanted, but hey, he just met Dennis Quaid. That's gotta count for something. The Bob Dylan blunder. Then there's James, another hopeful seller walking in with a Bob Dylan album, self-portrait, released back in the 70s. Looking a little worn, but still intact, James wants $150 for it. But Rick isn't so sure. He points out that the album isn't one of Dylan's best. It's mostly cover songs, not original material. Not exactly a hit among collectors. Rick plays it safe and lowballs James with an offer of $50. James hesitates but finally gives in. What he doesn't know is that Bob Dylan is actually in town, performing in Las Vegas. Rick hatches a plan, get the album signed and flip it for a higher price. He sends Chumlee on a mission. By some stroke of luck, Chumlee manages to run into Dylan outside his hotel. Dylan, being gracious, agrees to sign the album. But here's where Chumlee messes up, big time. Instead of just getting the signature, he asks Dylan to personalize it to him. Back at the shop, Chumlee proudly presents the signed album, grinning from ear to ear. Rick, on the other hand, is not amused. He stares at the inscription. To Chumlee, best wishes, Bob Dylan. A one-of-a-kind, personally signed Bob Dylan album, but only valuable to one person, Chumlee himself. Rick shakes his head, knowing full well that no one else will want to buy it. Classic Chumlee move. Steve Carell's surprise visit. Then there's Steve Carell. At first, Rick doesn't even recognize him. He eyes the man and jokingly says he always imagined Steve Carell would be much shorter. The man finally admits, yes, he is that Steve Carell. Instead of selling something, Carell gets interested in a World War II diver's knife. He picks it up, turns it around in his hands, and jokes that it looks more like a billy club. After some laughs, they start negotiating. Carell offers $4,000, which is much more than the original asking price of $2,500. But Rick, sensing an opportunity, pushes it up to $5,000. Carell, not backing down, raises his bid to $6,000. The game is on. In the end, though, Carell decides not to buy the knife. He's just browsing, enjoying the weird and wonderful world of pawnshop treasures. Still, Rick knows that in Las Vegas, you never know who you'll bump into. Dana White's big buy, and then there's Dana White, the president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, walking in, ready to drop some serious cash. Chumlee, as always, lets something slip. Rick's prized samurai sword, which took 2 years to restore, is not for sale. That, of course, makes White want it even more. Sensing a big payday, Chumlee tells him it's worth $40,000. White, without hesitation, offers $33,000, plus another batch of swords. for a total of $60,000. Before Rick even knows what's happening, the deal is done. Rick walks in a few minutes later and realizes his prized sword is gone. Sold, just like that. He's annoyed, but what can he do? The money's already in the register. At least he's got another sword to show White, hoping to sell it for $10,000. White, always the businessman, talks him down to $9,900. Another deal done. Mick Foley and the wrestling memorabilia. Then comes Mick Foley, the hardcore wrestling legend, coming in to authenticate a signed Mankind mask and a Dude Love t-shirt. Chumlee, being the wrestling fanatic that he is, loses his mind. The seller, Scott, is hoping for $300 for the shirt and $200 for the mask. Foley confirms that they're legitimate, but Rick only offers $200 for both. I bought this a while ago for $8,500, and since then I have not gotten any solid offers. So this might finally be the time to make some money on it. Scott, disappointed, decides to keep his treasures. Meeting Foley in person? Priceless. Selling his items for a fraction of their worth? Not happening. The Def Leppard guitar deal, and then there's the Def Leppard guitar. A stunning blonde woman walks in asking $10,000 for it. It's signed and painted by Phil Collen himself, making it a rare find. Rick, cautious as ever, calls in an expert, who turns out to be Phil Collen himself. Collen recognizes the guitar instantly. He even plays a few notes, proving it's still in top condition. The seller, confident as ever, sticks to her price. Rick, playing the long game, offers $8,000. After a bit of haggling, they settle at $8,500, Katie Couric's visit. And finally, Katie. Couric, the famous journalist, comes in, eyeing a Mark Twain signature. Corey, not recognizing her at first, mistakes her for Katie Holmes, then Kate Winslet. Couric laughs it off, but she's got her eye on something big. Rick, knowing the value of the Twain signature, prices it at $220,000. Couric balks. She wasn't planning on spending that much. She counters with $112,000. Rick, never one to miss an opportunity, agrees. A fair deal with a nice profit on top. Rick barely has time to process the day's deals before the next unexpected item turns up. A guitar too illegal to sell. The hidden gun desk. Imagine buying what you think is a regular desk, only to find out later it has a built-in gun. That's exactly what happened when someone picked up an old desk at an estate sale. Turns out, this wasn't just any desk. Push down on the inkwell and a bullet fires out through a hidden trapdoor. Now, before you start thinking this is some kind of ultimate home security feature, let's break it down. The gun itself wasn't exactly practical. It was small caliber, maybe a .22 short, and there was no barrel. That means the bullet didn't have much power behind it. More of a painful inconvenience than a real defense weapon. But here's where things got tricky. Firearms made before the late 1800s are considered antiques and don't require registration. However, no one knew exactly when this gun desk was made. If it was manufactured after 1898, then it's a problem. Rick had to bring in an expert just to figure out whether he could legally buy it. The verdict? The desk was too much of a gray area. The only way to sell it legally was to have a gunsmith deactivate the firing mechanism. Not exactly what you want to hear when you're trying to make a quick buck. The illegal tortoiseshell guitar, next. Up, a guitar that looked innocent enough until you realized it was made out of tortoiseshell. That's right. Back in the day, tortoiseshell was used for all kinds of things. Combs, sunglasses, guitar picks. But it was eventually banned because turtles are endangered. The seller had no idea whether it was legal to own or sell. The pawn shop had to call in an expert, and the answer wasn't great. Selling something made from real tortoiseshell can land you in serious trouble. People have paid massive fines and even done jail time for selling these things illegally. The verdict? No way the shop was touching this thing. Even if it was a valuable item, it just wasn't worth the risk. The 1950s German spy camera. Then there was the 1950s German spy camera. Or at least, that's what the seller claimed it was. It was tiny, about the size of a cigarette lighter, and it did look like something straight out of a secret agent movie. But was it actually used by spies? Probably not. Real spy gear doesn't usually end up in the hands of random people, And then there was a bigger problem. Engraved on the camera was a name and a social security number, both of which someone had scratched out. That's a huge red flag. Serial numbers and engravings being removed is a major no-go in the pawn business. It could mean the item was stolen. At the end of the day, the shop couldn't take the risk, whether it was a real spy camera or just an old-school gimmick. The championship ring with a major problem. Championship rings are always valuable, especially when they come from big-time college football teams. But this Penn State Orange Bowl ring from the 1970s had a major problem. The original engraving had been removed. That meant there was no way to trace who originally owned it, which is a huge red flag in the pawn world. Buying something with a missing engraving is like buying a car. Without a vehicle identification number, it's just not happening. The seller was out of luck. The shop wanted it, but they couldn't legally buy it. The ancient shekel with a shady past own of the wildest items ever brought in was a silver shekel from Tyre. This was the same kind of coin that, according to the Bible, Judas was paid with to betray Jesus. That alone made it super valuable. But there was a catch. The shop had no way of knowing if it was stolen. Turns out the original owner had reported it missing, and the police got involved. The shop had to put the coin on hold, and it looked like they were out $600. But in a rare stroke of luck, the insurance company had already paid out for the stolen coin, meaning it was now free and clear. And guess what? It was real. Not the exact Judas coin, but still worth thousands. The risky business of rare items buying. And selling rare items is always a risk. Whether it's a hidden gun inside a desk, a guitar made from banned materials, or an ancient coin with a questionable past, there's always a chance that something isn't quite legal. In the pawn world, you either make a smart deal or end up losing big time. And when the law gets involved, things can go from bad to worse real fast. A custom Mustang and a high-stakes test drive. Just when the shop seems to have seen it all, something arrives that changes everything. A custom Mustang and a high-stakes test drive. The pawn shop business is full of surprises, and some of the biggest transactions in history have happened inside those four walls. When people need quick cash, they bring in anything, from rare coins to luxury cars, hoping to walk out with a small fortune, and sometimes they do. Vic Flick's legendary guitar. Most people walking into pawn shops with guitars don't have much more than a dust-covered Fender they found in their basement. But Vic Flick was not just anybody. The man behind the legendary James Bond theme walked into the shop carrying his 1961 Fender Stratocaster. This was not just any old guitar. It had been played on classic recordings from the Beatles to Tom Jones. The price he asked for? $70,000. After some haggling, the deal closed at $55,000. A small price for a piece of rock history. Presidential memorabilia, JFK's cigar box. When a piece of presidential history walks through the door, there is no way Rick Harrison is going to let it slip away. This time, it was a cigar box that once belonged to none other than John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And if that wasn't impressive enough, the cigars inside were still intact. JFK's cigar box. A priceless find since a similar John Fitzgerald Kennedy cigar box had previously sold for well over $500,000. Getting this one for $60,000 was practically a steal. The rare Hertz Penske GT Mustang back in 2013, Hertz teamed up with Roger Penske to create a rare gem. Only 150 custom GT Mustangs bearing his name were ever made. One lucky owner decided to part ways with his and rolled into the shop looking to make a deal. To prove it was the real deal, professional race car driver Joey Logano took it for a spin. The test drive must have been convincing because it sold for $60,000. Rick's treasure hunt and the gun desk Rick. Harrison doesn't just wait for treasures to walk through the door. Sometimes, he goes out looking for them, concealed in all kinds of things. Swords, canes, even cameras. Hidden weapons have always been fascinating. I've seen desks with hidden gun compartments, Rick said. But I've never seen a desk as a gun. It was something straight out of a James Bond movie. The Panama Pacific $50 gold coin. When a customer offered $70,000 for a 1915 Panama Pacific $50 gold coin, Rick flew to one of the largest coin auctions in the country to track one down. After some intense bidding, he landed the coin for $6,500, leaving with a solid profit. The 1932 Ford Roadster negotiation battle. Rick found himself in a tough negotiation battle over a custom 1932 Ford Roadster, a sleek black beauty with a roaring 500 horsepower engine. This barely touched classic had only 450 miles on it. After a back and forth that felt like a boxing match, they settled on 68,276. Not too bad. A poker game and a fortune in a coin. Imagine winning a coin in a poker game and finding out it's worth a small fortune. That's exactly what happened when a man walked in with a 1922 high-relief dollar. He thought it was rare and valuable, asking for $20,000. Turns out he seriously underestimated it. After an expert took a look, the coin's value shot up to $80,000. Whoever lost that coin in poker probably regretted it forever. The most expensive guitar in Pawn Stars history. Vic Flicks. Guitar was impressive, but it wasn't the most expensive one to hit the shop. That honor goes to a 1941 Gibson SJ200, once owned by Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills & Nash. The seller even had the bill of sale signed by Stills himself, with proof, like that. Rick wasn't going to let it slip away. After some bargaining, he pulled out $85,000, making it one of the biggest guitar buys in Pawn Stars history. Les Paul's legendary guitar. If one legendary guitar wasn't enough, here was another. Les Paul. The man who practically invented the electric guitar had a massive influence on rock music, and his wife, Mary Ford, was also a music legend in her own right. So when one of her guitars showed up at the shop, the price tag was bound to be high. The seller originally asked for a jaw-dropping $250,000. Rick worked his magic and got it down to $90,000, knowing it could be worth even more down the road. The classic Lincoln Roadster and Shelby GT 350A, 1932. Lincoln Roadster, with a powerful 12-cylinder engine, rolled into the shop looking like it had been frozen in time. The owner knew he had something special, and he was right. The deal closed at $95,000, making it one of the most expensive cars ever sold in the shop, but that wasn't even the end of it. Another car, a Shelby GT 350, also got a buyer. At an even $100,000, a haul of silver. Worth thousands, this wasn't just a single item, it was a haul. A man walked in pushing a cart loaded with over 200 lbs of silver, pre-1964 coins, silver bars, and a massive pile of precious metal that had been sitting around for more than a decade. His father had advised him to invest in silver, and it paid off big time. After some weighing and calculations, Rick shelled out $11,000. That's what you call a good day at the pawn shop. Are collectibles a smart investment? Are collectibles and precious metals the safest long-term investment, or just a gamble? Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more incredible pawn shop finds and high-stakes deals.